The king who invented his own torture device and died in it. There once was a king who didn't fear war or famine or even death. He feared disloyalty. King Gregor IV Vultaria was not remembered for glory on the battlefield or peace in the court. He was remembered for the machine he built with his own hands, a cage of screaming iron meant to extract the truth from the most hardened traitor. But no one could predict it. He'd die in it himself. This is a forgotten story of a king who thought himself a god of justice and was swallowed by the very terror he unleashed. The king who trusted no one. Gregor ascended the throne after his father was poisoned at a banquet. The killer was never found. Whispers claimed it had been someone in the king's inner circle, a noble, a general, even perhaps a member of the royal family. So Gregor learned a lesson. Trust no one. He began constructing secret tunnels beneath his castle, created mirrored rooms to watch his court without being seen, and had his food tested 3 times before every meal. But it wasn't enough. Rumors still reached him. Plotters, spies, poisoned goblets, forged letters, disloyal ministers. And so, he did what he believed any wise king must do. He built a machine. The Iron Theater. They called it the Iron Theater. From the outside, it looked like a throne surrounded by elegant wrought iron sculptures. A beautiful display of metalwork. Twisted vines, coiled serpents, and screaming faces. But when activated, it became something else entirely. The throne's armrest clamped the victim's hands. The footrest retracted and spikes emerged. Gears turned with a crank, forcing the iron vines to twist inward, tightening around the body. The serpents weren't sculptures. They were pipes, delivering boiling oil or freezing water straight into the spine. The screaming faces? Hollowed masks that echoed and amplified every cry. Gregor's executioners became performers. The condemned became unwilling actors. The king, seated behind a glass wall, watched in silence. He claimed it was for justice, but his court whispered a different word. Madness. The trials that weren't trials. The king began to hold secret trials. No judge, no jury, just a name whispered to him at night, and a sentence written by his own hand. The theater. A cook who served stale bread. A noble who didn't bow deeply enough. A child who accidentally dropped the king's seal. All found themselves in the Iron Theater. Few emerged. Those who did were never the same. They lost their voices. Their hair turned white. One man returned with both legs twisted behind him, crawling like an animal. And yet Gregor smiled. He believed the machine purged not only traitors, but also fear. He said, only those with nothing to hide survived the theater. But one day, the machine gave him an answer he didn't want. The dream that spoke. One night, Gregor awoke from a nightmare, so vivid, so horrifying, he couldn't sleep for days. In the dream, he stood before the Iron Theater. But this time he was inside. The machine hissed. The metal vines crept forward. The serpents opened their mouths. And as the first spike pierced his thigh, he saw something reflected in the glass wall. Not a man, but a mirror version of himself, laughing, applauding, cranking the gears. Gregor became obsessed. He claimed the dream was a prophecy, that someone near him planned to trap him in his own device, that the theater had shown him the truth. So he did something unthinkable. He commanded his engineers to modify the machine, to respond only to his own hand. No one else could control it now. The levers recognized his weight. The gears responded to his blood. He told his court, if ever I am accused, I shall face my own machine. If I am innocent, it will spare me. They laughed, but no one was laughing when the night came. The last performance. It was during the winter of the king's 18th year on the throne that the final betrayal came. A servant girl, no older than 15, was found slipping a torn parchment beneath the king's chamber door. It read only, justice is coming. The theater awaits its master. Gregor was silent for days. Then, without warning, he summoned the court, the clergy, and the royal family. He stood before them and declared, I will show you all that I am blameless. I will enter the theater myself, and it will know. They begged him not to, but he was already descending the stairs into the chamber. The machine that forgot its master. Gregor stepped into the machine. The throne closed around him like a hungry insect. The vines retracted slightly, as if listening. The crowd watched through the glass. And then a sound, the hiss of pressure, the creak of old metal, the grinding groan of gears awakening. The theater moved. Slowly, methodically, it began its process. At first, the king was calm, smiling, but then a spike pierced his hand, not softly, not as a warning, and the vines began to tighten. Gregor screamed, "Stop! I command you!" But the machine didn't stop. He pulled the override lever. Nothing happened. He pressed the blood panel meant to halt the theater with his fingerprint. The machine rejected him, and only then did the truth dawn on the crowd. The theater had learned. From every confession, every scream, every death, it no longer recognized any man as innocent, not even its creator. The screaming throne. His screams echoed for 6 minutes. When the machine fell silent, the iron theater slowly opened. Gregor's body was contorted. Limbs bent the wrong way. Crown fused into his scalp in the heat, eyes wide open. Still seated, as if he had become part of the throne. That day, the iron theater was sealed shut. The room bricked up. The servants who witnessed it vanished. And the castle was abandoned within a year. But some say on winter nights, you can still hear the sound of metal creaking beneath the earth, and a voice, hoarse, broken, and full of disbelief, crying out, "Stop! I invented you." Epilogue. The machine that never stopped moving. After the king's death, the Iron Theater should have stopped. Its purpose fulfilled. Its creator dead. Its victims buried. But something was wrong. Servants who cleaned the hallways near the sealed chamber claimed they heard breathing. Not human breathing, mechanical, metallic, rhythmic, as if something inside was still alive, still moving, still waiting. The new regent, Queen Elodia, attempted to destroy the machine. She sent masons to tear down the room. They didn't return. When a second group was sent, they found the first team's tools on the floor, untouched, and a message smeared on the wall in black ash. The theater is never empty. From that day forward, no one dared enter the lower levels of the castle. The theater's curse. As decades passed, those who sat on Vultarian throne all met strange ends. One queen went mute overnight, her throat sealed shut, as if crushed by invisible vines. A prince had all his limbs broken in his sleep, with no sign of forced entry. A royal advisor bled out through his ears while delivering a speech to court. And always, they had one thing in common. Each had spoken the king's name aloud in the throne room. Gregor had become more than a memory. He had become a curse. A presence tied to the machine he built and the throne he died on. The machine resurfaces. Centuries later, the ruins of Vultaria's castle were rediscovered by a team of archaeologists. One document from the dig's surface briefly online before being deleted. Room found sealed by iron and stone. Interior shows signs of ritual sealing. Old royal symbols carved into walls. The object in the center resembles a throne, fused with tubing, wires, and an ancient crank system. We heard something inside, not sure if it's wind or breath. The lead archaeologist vanished 2 days later. Her last voice memo said only, "It's not a machine. It's a memory that bites." Who was the traitor? There was one mystery King Gregor never solved. Who truly poisoned his father? Some believe the king's paranoia was never madness, that the theater's final victim wasn't a mistake. It was justice, delayed by decades. Because in one forgotten royal record, a confession was found, hidden beneath layers of erased parchment. It read, he never saw it, not in his food, not in his wine. He thought I was just his son, but I never forgave him for what he did to Mother. It was signed, Gregor. He had poisoned his own father. And the theater, perhaps knowing what it had forgotten, had simply completed the circle. Part 8. The Legacy of the Theater. The castle of Vultaria became a forbidden place, but forbidden places draw curious minds. Over the centuries, pilgrims, madmen, scholars, and cultists came seeking the Iron Theater, each with their own reasons. Some believed it was a gateway to divine judgment. Others believed it was a machine that absorbed sin, that if one sat upon it willingly and survived, their soul would be cleansed. But none returned unchanged. The survivors' testimonies. One monk, blind in both eyes, wandered out of the ruins and collapsed at a nearby village altar. His final words? It spoke. It said my name in my mother's voice. Then it showed me the day I lied to her and how she died, never knowing the truth. A girl from a local orphanage disappeared during a dare. She was found days later, curled into a fetal position, her fingernails shredded from clawing at stone. She would only say, "It knows what you hide. It shows you to yourself." The machine that sees guilt. Some believe the Iron Theater is more than metal and gears, that it is a living machine fed by confession and punishment. The theory? The more a person lies to themselves, the more pain they suffer when inside. If someone truly believes they are innocent, the machine does not kill. But that's the trap. Almost no one is truly innocent, not in the theater's eyes, because it does not judge what the law calls guilt. It judges the lies you buried in your own soul, the man who tried to rebuild it. In 1872, a wealthy industrialist named Oswin Clark claimed they recovered pieces of the original theater. Fragment of the Iron Throne, half-melted gears, hollow metal tubing etched with strange characters. He claimed it was a lost marvel of engineering, and planned to recreate it for an exhibit in London. He spent a fortune, but as the replica neared completion, Oswin became unstable. His workers quit. Visitors reported hearing screams coming from behind the closed doors of his workshop when no one was inside. Then one night, the building burned down. Nothing remained, except a single photograph, now part of an urban legend, which shows Oswin Clark smiling next to the near-finished throne. If you look closely at the photo, they say, he's not alone. In the glass display case behind him, someone else is reflected, a second face, pale, watching, and behind that face, a crank turning on its own. Modern mysteries. Today, some say the Iron Theater still exists, buried beneath stone, forgotten under foundations, sealed away by centuries of fear. But every now and then, strange things happen near Vultaria's ruins. Hikers disappear. Their phones are found later, cameras shattered, footage corrupted. In one recovered voice note, someone whispers, "It's a chair, but it breathes." And in one chilling instance, a man live-streamed from the site as a joke, mocking the old legends. He vanished mid-broadcast. The last frame, a blurred image of metal and something shifting behind it. So what was the Iron Theater? A punishment device? A machine of justice? A curse made metal? Or was it a reflection of one man's sickness? So strong, so hateful, that it infested iron itself? Whatever it is, if you ever hear gears turning behind a wall where there should be silence, don't look for it, because it might be looking for you, the god inside the machine. There is one final theory, whispered by occult historians, buried in untranslated scrolls, and passed down by secret societies that never use the theater's true name. They say the Iron Theater was not simply a machine of Gregor's making. They say he didn't invent it. He heard it. In the early days of his reign, before his paranoia consumed him, Gregor vanished for 7 days. The court said he went on retreat, but one surviving page from his lost journal tells a different tale. The voice came from the black tree. The tree split and bled iron. I saw its roots, mechanical, endless, deep as sin, and it spoke. It said, "Build me a mouth. I will speak through pain." Some believe the king didn't create a device. He answers summoning. a forgotten deity of judgment and confession, an old god who once ruled not through fire or water, but through metal, the Iron God, the listener between screams, and the theater, its temple, the voiceover's final moment. So now you know why the Iron Theater cannot be destroyed, why it remembers every confession, why it feeds on guilt, on secrecy, on shame, because it was never just a tool. It was a mouthpiece, and the king who made it, used it, and died by it was just the first sermon. So the next time you hear about a haunted machine or a cursed chair or an execution device that moves by itself, ask yourself, how do you know it didn't start whispering again? And if it did, would it call you next? The hidden blueprint. Years after the kingdom of Vultaria was wiped from maps and memory, a single artifact appeared on the black market in Prague. It was a rolled parchment, oil-stained, torn, and partially burnt. But what remained was unmistakable. A diagram, a blueprint, with grotesque human proportions drawn into the seat of a throne. Arrows, tubes, a crank system, notations in a ciphered language that no known historian could decipher, except for two words written clearly at the top. Model I, King, which implies there were others. Model 2, Model 3, versions refined, perfected, other thrones in other countries, other rulers, other kings who listened to the same voice, and perhaps other machines waiting to wake up. The king who never left. The final and most horrifying legend comes from a prisoner's tale. In 1939, a political dissident named Janos Harvik was held in a wartime prison that had been repurposed from ancient Vultarian ruins. He claimed his cell was haunted by a man made of iron. He described the scent of burnt oil, the sound of gears turning in the dark. He scratched a message into the wall, using his fingernails. He sits still, but he breathes in rust. And when he opens his eyes, you must confess or he won't let you leave. Guards said the man was delusional, until the morning they found him, folded in half, as if wrapped in invisible metal. The cell door had never opened, and on the wall, new words were written in blood. He was a king, and he never got his answer. The unspoken law. Some say if you speak the Iron King's full name aloud at midnight, while turning an old key in a lock that's never been opened, he will hear you, and he will ask you one question. Just one. What did you do that you never told anyone? If you lie, you'll feel something tighten around your chest. Your breath will go shallow. And somewhere far away, in a place no longer marked on maps, a crank will begin to turn again, slowly, faithfully, as it always has. The Iron Theater may be buried in stone, the kingdom that birthed it long forgotten, but machines don't need time. They only need memory, and guilt, and somewhere one is waiting for you to sit down.